What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got another edition of The Drive-In, where I watch recently released films and tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. Today I want to bring you guys the most ballyhooed, talked about horror release in quite a long time. It is the first theatrical release of a known horror franchise. Since the pandemic started. I had not been to theaters for about a year and a half, so it was nice to get back in. I saw this in theaters, safe, masked, socially distant, but saw this in theaters with a buddy of mine. I'm talking about 2021's first big-name horror film to come out in a long time, Spiral from the Book of Saw. Now, when I heard about this, I was very trepidatious because I've seen every Saw movie. I saw all 8 of them. The first 3 I love, obviously. They do get convoluted as they go along. Everyone talks about the canon and the convolution of all the interconnected before and after and during stuff they try to weave into these movies. The canon kind of is an ever-expanding storyline. The folklore gets bigger and bigger each time they do one of these movies. In my opinion, and I've done Saw franchise review videos on this channel before, so if you want to go back and check those out, they are on this channel. I love the first 3. 4 through 6 are decent to me, but they start to kind of fall off a cliff a little bit. 7 I didn't like as much, the final chapter, and then I saw 8 in theaters 2 years ago when it came out, and I was not a fan of that one at all. So I think this franchise, in my opinion, was starting to overstay its welcome. But then I saw the previews. I saw that Chris Rock had written a treatment for this movie. I saw Samuel L. Jackson was in it, and he had the line, "Wanna play a game, motherfucker?" So I had to see it. Just on curiosity alone, because Jordan Peele started this trend now of comedic actors going over into the horror realm, and Jordan Peele, obviously now with Twilight Zone and Us and Get Out, has done a wonderful job. Now Chris Rock is taking his turn at executive producing and writing a treatment for this movie in which he stars. So, interesting to see how this turns out. Let's get into it. This film was written by Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger, who also wrote Jigsaw. I think Stolberg especially has done stuff like Piranha in the past and the Sorority Row remake in the past, so he's got his hands on a lot of horror things. This was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who has directed and been involved in many previous Saw films, including directing number 2 and 3, which are 2 of the best in the franchise. Love Darren Lynn Bousman, he's great. Starring Chris Rock, Samuel L. Jackson, and Morgan David Jones. Basically, the plot of this film, and I won't be spoiling anything, I'm going to talk extemporaneously, but I'm going to talk vague about this movie early on. I will do my spoiler part at the end of this review, so spoiler free for now. If you guys haven't seen it yet, don't worry. I won't spoil anything until I give you warning. Chris Rock stars as Detective Banks, who is the son of a famous cop in this area who polices a bunch of crooked cops. And Chris Rock's character, Detective Banks, basically turned in some of the crooked cops on the force and got shunned by the rest of the force. So he's kind of the one do-gooder cop that's on the force under his dad's legacy, living in his dad's shadow, trying to be the one good cop in a branch of bad apples who have turned their backs on him now, but they only let him kind of on the force because his dad is a famous cop, who is Samuel L. Jackson. And basically, he gets partnered up because he can't trust any of the current force because they don't like him. He gets partnered up with this new character, Rookie, played by Morgan David Jones, and you kind of see a detective buddy cop thing going on as the Jigsaw murders start up once again, and they've got to figure out if it's a copycat or why these murders are happening to the police force. That is the basic plot in this movie. Again, I won't spoil anything here, so I'll go right into my pros and cons sections. Pros. There are a lot of good things about this movie. The runtime is 1 hour and 35 minutes, so you get about 1 hour and a half plus credits, and that is a nice solid runtime for something like this. Detective movies, Saw movies, the longer they go, the more the middle kind of sinks and the more the plot kind of gets watered down. I like this runtime. 1 hour and a half is good. And this is pretty fast paced. There's not a lot of downtime. It is a lot of character building, and it's a lot of setting up the murders. So Chris Rock and his partner, the Rookie, are always chasing after these murders, and they're coming up pretty quickly. A lot of it is just showing flashbacks to what happened to Chris Rock's character previously. It's showing the relationship between Chris Rock and his dad, Samuel L. Jackson, in this. So I have to commend this film for doing a better job character building. A lot of times in the Saw films, you only get the character building stuff at the very beginning and the very end. Once all of the twists come together and you start seeing how it was all set up through flashbacks, that's when you get the characters. In this film, you get the flashbacks earlier on in the film. So you're building the characters as you go along. So you're not just backloading it with the last 20 minutes of all this information being thrown at you, where you start getting confused and wondering who the characters are. They build the characters consistently in this with the flashbacks as they go. And also, the dialogue with the characters. You can tell Chris Rock had a hand in writing this treatment. It is very much delivered like Chris Rock delivers his comedy, but not done in a way that hurts the horror in this aspect. A lot of the dialogue in this feels very current. It's very fun. Chris Rock brings that personality to this role, and the dialogue between characters makes them feel like a police force. There's a lot of like aggression toward each other. There's a lot of dirty jokes. There's a lot of like taking breaks in between as they're trying to find the killer situation here. And the dialogue feels real, and I like the way it was broken down in this. Again, it aids to the runtime because the talking scenes are fun, and then you get into the horror stuff with all the gory scenes. So it's a nice mixture, and it makes the film feel fast. Well shot. Really enjoyed the way this was shot. They had some of the effects stuff when people were in the traps and their minds are going crazy and the screen kind of flickers. They brought that back. That's a hit or miss thing for me, but I think it was shot Saw style in this. I like a lot of the panning they use. They pan a lot around the rooms with the cameras. They go around blind corners. They do a lot of 360 shots when people are laying down or they're stuck in traps. I like that. That feels very Jigsaw style. I also wrote down I like the Jigsaw style lighting. This film doesn't always feel like a Saw film, but when it does, it's because they're in the layers and the basements and stuff like that. All the rooms feel like they're lit for Jigsaw. You feel like you're involved in the traps. You feel like you're in the sewers. You feel like you're in the basements. Those are the parts of the film that make me feel like I'm watching an actual Jigsaw canon film. So I like the way it's shot. I love the way it's lit. They used a lot of particular greens and reds in the lighting for the tension scenes, and it helps to add to the tension. I like that a lot. Good acting overall. There's times when you're watching Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, especially Chris Rock, where it feels like, okay, he's doing a little bit too much comedy. Some of Chris Rock's deliveries are a little bit too comedic. That is just who he is as a person. Again, a lot of the comedy dialogue felt very much in his wheelhouse, so that was a good casting choice there. Some of the stuff, again, you're looking like he's pulling some faces. He's maybe overacting a little bit because he's not used to doing a more serious horror film. So I won't say it's like an A+ in acting, but I think overall, Chris Rock did show a lot of range. He was serious. He was intense when he had to be. His facials, when they were maintained, were pretty solid. Samuel L. Jackson, too. He's got a lot of motherfuckers and a lot of funny cussing, and he's got good chemistry with Chris Rock, but he also is serious and in peril in the moments that he has to be. So I like that, too. So while I won't say it's a perfectly acted film, it is more than I expected from Chris Rock being a comedian. He pushed himself, and while he didn't land every time, I thought his jokes landed a lot, and I thought his serious moments felt like a legitimate actor. I give Chris Rock a lot of credit. You can tell that he felt the script. You can tell he was close to the Saw movies, and he likes the source material, and you can tell that he's working hard. I really like that a lot. Samuel L. Jackson obviously is a national treasure, and he fit in this like a glove, even though it was a weird choice at first. I like him in this role. And Morgan David Jones playing the rookie cop, too, was a nice foil for Chris Rock to play off of. When you're going to do a detective buddy cop film, when they're going to be together a lot, they have to have chemistry, and I felt like they did. Also, good traps. There's not a ton of traps in this film. I won't spoil what they are. That's a big part of the Saw films. When you go to see one of these movies, you want to see good traps and good gore. Both of those deliver. Good traps and good gore are two of my last big pros in this film. Again, there are not as many traps as in the other films, but when they are in the film, they land pretty hard. You get some really good ones. In particular, the last trap, one of the last traps, is my personal favorite. I won't spoil it here, but I love how agonizing and how just psychological it is and how slow burn the trap delivers. So the gore and the traps in this film are a little more faint than before, but I think that's fine because of the character building, because of the use of comedy, because of how gruesome the traps are. They can afford to be spread out a little more like they were in this film. So good usage there as well. Cons, not totally canon. I don't feel like this, for the fact that this was a good film, it doesn't necessarily feel like a good Saw film, if that makes any sense. They do reference, not spoiling anything, but they do reference John Kramer in this. You do maybe see some stuff about John Kramer in this. So there are some links to the past, But aside from the Jigsaw murders happening in the past in this film, there are not a lot of references to the original films or anything in particular about them aside from John Kramer. So if you're coming into this film looking for a story building based on Saw and you want to see the original Saw stuff, you're not going to get a lot of that here, beside a few lines here and there. It didn't feel like an entirely canon film. It felt like a buddy cop film that threw some, like, I've seen reviewers mention Seven, like the detective stuff with some gore stuff mixed in. That's what this felt like, more of a buddy cop detective film, like a psychological cop film, than it did feel like a Saw film. It's almost like they took a standalone regular film and just kind of threw a couple Saw things in there, peppered them in because the franchise makes money. That happens in horror a lot, where something is called a sequel to a film and it's just a different film with like a name slapped on it at the end. Oh, Saw makes money, we'll call this Saw. That's kind of what it felt like at times. Not entirely, but it felt like that at times here. One of the biggest pros that I skipped over in this, and this goes along with canon, so I kind of like this one here. It's a pro, but it is coherency. Saw is not always a coherent film. I love the first three because I can follow them very, very easily. The last 4 or 5 now did not feel as coherent. They were just throwing extra stuff at the wall. They're like, okay, well, Saw's making money. It comes out once a year, so we're going to rush the script. We're going to throw some twists in there for the sake of twists. We're going to connect it all so it feels like it's all one big movie. And some of the connections don't make sense, and they just keep adding disciples to John Kramer's lore. Before the stuff that happened before the first movie, the second movie, it starts getting very confusing, and you have to like eat a bunch of fish and listen to Mozart just to understand what the hell the plot is. In this one, it's very coherent. The plot makes sense the entire time, and it's very easy to follow and understand. So if you want some Saw-style movie in there with some different stuff that feels like it's easy to follow, you'll like this. But again, with that being said, in the con section, it's not totally canon. It feels like a different film with some Saw stuff peppered in just so they could call it Saw. Bad voice. They used the voice for Billy in this, but they didn't use Billy. It was a different mascot, which didn't look quite as cool. There are some references to some old mascots, but it's a different kind of mascot in this, so it's not quite as cool looking. And the voice is horrible. I hate the voice. It's my biggest con in this. They use the voice for the "want to play a game, live or die, make your choice." They use those catchphrases with a different voice this time that sounds like a Stephen Hawking computerized voice. It's like a female computer automated voice they use instead of using the original Jigsaw voice, and I hate it. It takes me out of the film at times. Either do the original voice and make it feel like a Saw film, or do something entirely different. Don't use the same catchphrases and the same style of voice and change the voice around, because the voice wasn't intimidating, it wasn't scary, it felt like just an automated computer phone call voice. It was silly and it took me out of the film, so I did not like that at all. Ending logic. When you get toward the end of this film, there are some leaps in logic that don't really make sense. Some of the decisions of a couple of the characters and a couple of the cops and sort of getting the film to a crescendo, you start going, they could have done this a different way. This didn't really feel like a logical way to, like, some choices the characters would make. It doesn't match up with some of the rest of the film. So I had some issues on the logic. And too much detective work. Sometimes in a horror film you want to see horror. And while there's tension the entire time and while the pacing is good, I feel like they focus too much sometimes on the buddy cop moments, the comedy dialogue, the cops chasing the killers, instead of just seeing more of the killers. If they had thrown an extra trap or two, an extra death or two, maybe some of the Jigsaw soundtrack, dun 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 dun, which we don't get a lot of in this film, which is sad. When they use the soundtrack, it's nice, but they don't use it very much. And when they do use it, they change it up a little bit, so it doesn't feel terribly authentic. And I feel like if they had put a few more deaths or a few more tense moments in there, maybe it would have overexposed the killing situation, but it would have felt more like a Saw film, more like a horror film. This felt more like a psychological, like a thriller drama kind of thing, more than a horror. So that the detective work, while it was nice, took away a little bit from the film. So with that being said, the end of my spoiler-free review, I'm going to give this film a 6.5 out of 10. Way better than average. Nowhere near as good as the first 3 Saws, in my opinion. They are still the best. But this one is one of the best sequels after 3. I would say this is leagues better than 7 and 8, better than the one that came out 2 years ago. It's logical, it's shot well, it has some good Saw moments, it has good gore, it has good dialogue, good pacing. I like this film overall. Again, it doesn't feel like a horror film all the time, and they could have put a little more horror and Saw aspects into it, which takes it down a little bit. But I would give this film a 6.5 out of 10, and I would recommend it for Saw fans and just fans of like Seven style detective thriller, psychological good movies like that. It's a good coherent plot, and it's paced well, and it's acted well, and I think you guys will like it. So that is the end of my spoiler-free review. Here come the spoilers. So if you guys have not seen it, turn this video off, come back and watch it when you do. 6.5 out of 10. Now, for those of you guys that want spoilers, here they go. Basically, the rookie cop who we think has died, early on in the film, you see his tattoo as part of a dead body is not actually dead. He actually winds up being the one behind this all. He unveils himself as he got one of his victims tattooed to look like his arm so that it was actually him. He lied to Chris Rock's character about having a family the whole time just to kind of suck him in. Basically, one of the crooked cops on the force killed the rookie's parents when he was younger. So this guy trained to be a cop and got on this case just to join up with Chris Rock because Chris Rock wants to fix the department and have straight and narrow cops, no more crooked cops. So this guy kills the crooked cops and joins up with Chris Rock as his partner because he believes Chris Rock wants to save the force just like he does. So he kind of joins up with Chris Rock, who saw his dad being killed, and gets revenge on the cops who killed him. So Chris Rock's got a choice to join the killer or not join the killer. And then at the end, we see Samuel L. Jackson strung up in a trap. The cops busting through the area cause Samuel L. Jackson to die. There's a mechanical device that brings Samuel L. Jackson's arm up, so the cops think he's armed and shoot him. Which, again, why would you do that? Because you see him, he's a cop and he's strung up, so he's not any danger. While Chris Rock is laying on the ground injured, the cop gets away, and we go to black. So again, leaps in logic there. I like the twist. You don't see the rookie actually see his body being killed, so you kind of know what's going to happen. But it's a decent twist. It's a good reason. It's a good use of flashbacks. I like the motivation there, and I like the choice between Chris Rock choosing his crooked father or choosing to join this killer who's trying to do the right thing like Chris Rock is. So there's a nice dichotomy of moral dilemma there and good tension there. But again, the rookie cop kind of just gets away. The cops don't really see him, even though he's supposed to be dead. He's kind of standing in plain sight. They shoot Samuel L. Jackson, who's obviously tied up and bloody, so why would you do that? So there are some leaps in logic, but it is overall a nice, coherent story that makes sense for the most part. So again, 6.5 out of 10. If you guys saw it, what'd you think? Please tell me in the comments below. Where do you think this film is going to end up at the end of the year in the top 10? What do you think of this movie? What do you think of the Saw series in general? And do you want to see another Saw film in this franchise now that there's fresh blood involved? Tell me in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, horror fans.